Hey there friends, it's Cassie and welcome back for another Brutus Monroe video. Today we have a special collaboration between Brutus Monroe and Deco foil. So let's talk about what we're going to be using. I've got some flock transfer in the colors ruby red and emerald green, and then these two, Rainglow and Blue Waves. You've seen me use these before, these Deco foils. They are incredible. We're going to be using that today as well. We have a couple of new stencils by Brutus Monroe. These stencils are called Background Baubles and Falling Leaves. Love those. They're great for Slimline and for A2, so keep that in mind. They're good for both. We're also going to be using some of this Easy Cut adhesive. It's wonderful for die cuts. It comes in a full sheet and there's 5 of them, and so you can cut that down as you need it. We also have our Slimline collection of pre-cut card panels and card bases that Brutus Monroe carries. We're going to be using those today. Love that they're pre-cut, makes them perfect for what we're doing. We're also going to be using this stamp set. This is not new, but this stamp set is the Falliday Silhouettes. This set goes perfectly with what we're doing. And then we have the Ornamental Designer Toner Sheets. These aren't new either, but these are great because they come with 2 sheets of clear and 2 sheets of white. And you can run these through your laminator with some foil, and you've got gorgeous, gorgeous backgrounds. All right, so we're also going to be using the Transfer Gel Duo and a Stencil Pal, and then we're going to be using some various glues that we have as well. So let's just jump right into our first card, shall we? We have one of the pre-cut panels, and what I'm doing is just ink blending on some Later Gator ink by Simon Hurley. I'm using one of the ergonomic brushes, and I just want this mostly on the edges. I'm going to bring it into the center a little bit, but that is not my biggest concern. I want this mostly on the edges. And then without cleaning our brush, we're going to go on to a darker green so that you can do that. You won't contaminate your inks too much. We're moving on to Fake Plant. I love how Later Gator and Fake Plant go on top of each other just so beautifully. And I feel like they just give this dynamic duo of color. And we're focusing mostly on the edges as well. I want those to be nice and dark. And then when I'm done, I'll set that off to the side. I pulled out one of the clear toner sheets, and I'm going to trim this down to be about 3.5 inches. I'll trim it down a little bit more later, but it's 3.5 inches by 8.5 inches. And then this is going to go perfectly on the front of that Slimline card. But I'm going to grab out some of the Rainglow Deco foil here, and I have cut this down, and we're going to do some paper piecing with it because I had some sheets of it. I had some leftover pieces, and you know me, I like to kind of work with what I have, especially when I'm doing Slimline. I just do my best to make it work, and if we do end up having a seam, we can work with that. But I don't think I really do. So I'm going to run this through my laminator. My laminator has been heating up for about 20-30 minutes, and all it takes is one go. I do suggest that maybe you take like a sweep tool over the top of that to get off any dust particles before you do it. I didn't, but it doesn't end up hurting me. These are good, solid images, and so the Deco foil wants to stick to it beautifully. So here we have it. I let that kind of cool just a second, and then we're going to peel back and see the magic. And if that doesn't get you excited, I don't know what would. I love this. Love, love, love it. And I'm going to save those little pieces for something later, but that looks fabulous. And then I'm just going to kind of stick it over the top of my panel that I had ink blended, but I want to actually take this a whole step further. And there's Max, he wants to say hi. But we have some Sequin sheets, and Brutus Monroe carries these, and I love these. Love these. And they're just so great over the top of a Slimline card. You can die cut them or whatever, but I just love the element that they bring. So I'm going to put that on my panel first, and I'm going to use some tissue tape to do that. That is in the Brutus Monroe store. So I'll grab a little bit of tissue tape, and I'm just going to put it on the 2 ends. It's not perfectly invisible, but it is close enough that you're really not paying any attention to that. And I mean, even Max isn't really paying much attention to it. So I'll peel that off, and it's pretty clear. I mean, you can still sort of see it, but like I said, it's not really enough. And then I'm going to center that up on my panel. There will be a little bit of a border on the top and bottom. Max is going to help me put that down. And then now we're going to take our Deco foil panel, and we're going to put that over the top as well. And oh my gosh, I love that so much. But to do that, we're going to take some liquid glue, and we're going to put it just behind each of the ornaments. So we'll put that behind each of the ornaments. Max is trying to be extremely helpful. You want to make sure that it doesn't squish out too much, and this does pretty decently. This glue does come out pretty quickly, so you don't need to squeeze a whole lot, but it does a fine job. And then we're going to stick that right down on top of our sequin sheet. And because it's on top of something that's kind of slippery, I don't want this going anywhere, and I want this to dry nicely and stay flat. I'm going to take a large stamp block, the largest I have, and set that on top and let that dry. We'll move on to stamping out our sentiments. So I've got a piece of Raven cardstock that I have put some magic powder bag all over. And then we'll grab the sentiments that we want and ink those up with our embossing ink. Those sentiments come from that Falliday Silhouettes. So I've got one that says Happy Thanksgiving and two that say Season's Greetings, because I've made 3 cards, so I went ahead and got those all ready to go. I'm going to cover that with my Alabaster embossing powder, and then we will heat set that till that is smooth and melted. And at this point, Max has decided my quality control is good enough. So he's going to kind of poke his head in a little bit more, but he's going to take off. He's decided that maybe wrestling with his brother is a better use of his time. So you'll know that this is good to go because it'll go from a matte finish to a shiny finish. And then I've trimmed those down, and I'm going to adhere down my sentiment using that same liquid glue so that these won't have a ton of bulk, and these will go through the mail just super easy since these are going to be Christmas cards. And then I can attach this down to one of the pre-made or pre-cut card bases, and we have a card. It is all good to go. Moving on to our second card, I have another one of those pre-cut panels, and I'm going to take some woof ink, and I am just going to kind of go along the edges with that ink, just going all the way around. And it's super, super, super subtle. I want it to be super subtle. I just didn't want it to be stark white is really what it was, because the next thing I'm going to do is bring in that stencil. I'm going to bring in the background Baubles stencil. And I'm going to tape down my panel first, kind of line up my stencil, and then I'll grab out some more purple tape to tape that down, make sure that doesn't go anywhere. And then I'm going to pull out our transfer gel. This is the Deco Foil Transfer Gel Duo. Now, I've used the other stuff before and I like it just fine, and it works just fine, but the other stuff only works with a laminator. The Duo will work not only with your laminator, but it will also work with your die cutting machine. So that pressure is what works, or what gets it to go. Now you're going to want to let this baby dry for a long time. I would say at least an hour. So don't put it on too thick if you don't have a lot of time, but if you, I would suggest set it there, go make dinner, do whatever, but make sure it's good and dry. I did walk away for about 45 minutes, not quite an hour, probably should have waited a little bit longer, and you'll see why. But I'm going to pull out the Deco foil in the color Blue Waves. That is one of the new ones that they collaborated together and made, and I love this one too. This one just has that, it's just gorgeous. It does look like water or something. It's just beautiful. So I've trimmed this down. I like to use my Fiskars wire trimmer to do that because it just cuts it smoother. And this stuff is a little tacky, so you can set down your foil on top and it will stick, you know, and then I'm going to trim off the excess, and then I'm going to run this through my die cutting machine. You run it through just like you would if you had a die cut on top of it. And that pressure is what is going to cause the foil to stick. So I'll pull this away here in a second and you'll see what happens. So there's one spot that wasn't completely dry, and that's what it did. And that's okay. It's fine. I'm going to end up covering that with the sentiment, which I do all the time with my mistakes. Just cover it up with something, cover it with an embellishment or a sentiment or whatever. So here's my sentiment. I'm going to stick that right down on top of that. But I love how that Blue Waves, it's just, oh, I could look at that stuff all day. Really, really pretty. I'm going to trim down my panel just a little bit so that it will have a little bit of a border all around it when I stick it to my card base. But yeah, it'll have a nice little white border, and that's where you can sort of see the gray on the edges. I'll use that same liquid glue to adhere down my card panel, and then we'll use the same glue to adhere down our sentiment. You could, you know, pop it up, but I want these to be easy mailers for Christmas. And this didn't take a whole lot of time at all. You could crank out a bunch of these babies. And there you go. Season's Greetings. We're good to go. Love how that turned out. So pretty, that shine. Now let's move on to our last card. This one's going to use the flock, the transfer sheets, along with our Deco foil, or the iCraft Easy Cut adhesive. And what I did basically is trim this down. So you'll see I already have a bunch of panels of that, and I trimmed it down in diagonals, and I'll show you how I do that here with the green. I did the same thing with the red flock, but basically what I do is I take this square of flock, and I'm just going to cut it right down the center diagonally. And then from here, I'm going to cut 1/2-inch sections. So I'm going to chop off this little section here that I'm not going to use, but from there, I'm just doing little 1/2-inch sections in my guillotine trimmer, and then those will work so perfectly on the top of my card panel. So we'll just do that all the way. And that's what I did with the ruby red, and I also did with our Easy Cut adhesive. And I haven't adhered, obviously, anything down to the panel, but I'll show you how we do that too. A glass mat comes in handy here. So I've got my glass mat all ready to go. I don't want my panel shifting on me, so I'm just going to put a little purple tape down on my glass mat and stick my panel on top of that. And then I'm going to grab the biggest strips that I have, and I'm going to work my way from the center on the way out. And this stuff is easy. There's a little side that's just easy peel that away, and then I'm going to kind of line that up using the grid on my glass mat. You could eyeball it. Actually, I end up eyeballing it most of the way from here on out, but yeah, I'm just kind of trying to make sure that I have a fairly even space in between those, and I'm just working my way from the middle on out. Now that we've got that done, we're going to peel that away, and some of that will stick, and that's okay because that's where the glass mat comes in. But I'm just going to trim off all of that excess, mostly because if it sticks to things, then it just gets in the way. But this is just an easier way to handle the situation. I haven't peeled off any of the release paper or anything yet, and so this is just a super simple process, but we'll keep trimming, and there we have it. Now I'm going to lay out the flock that I need. I'm grabbing the biggest pieces, just trying to make sure that I have enough that fits, and where it doesn't fit, I can always trim, and I can use those pieces on other pieces. All right, so I'm going to peel off my release paper, and then I'm going to stick my flock down, color side down, because obviously that's what's going to stick to our stuff. And then when I get that all the way done, because I'm going to go all the way up, going every other color, I'm going to run this through my die cutting machine. And so there it is. We'll just stick that through the die cutting machine, run it through like we were running it with a die over the top of it, and that pressure is going to push into the adhesive, and then we'll be able to peel away our flock background, and you'll see that it sticks beautifully to it, just absolutely beautifully. And there will be a couple of spots, but especially since I cut these to be exact, where the adhesive kind of shows through, and the easy fix for that, but take a look at that nice soft flock feel. It's so cool. It looks like a little candy cane, a fuzzy candy cane. So the couple spots, like I was saying, where there is some adhesive that sticks through, I'm just going to take my magic powder bag over the top of that, and that will take care of any of the adhesive. The next step is I actually have some of the ornamental toner sheets. I have this cut down to a small piece that I had, and I am going to run this through my laminator with some Deco foil. This one is the gold shattered glass. I'll run that through my Amazon Basics laminator, and just do that one time because, like I said, these are nice solid images, and I usually don't have any issue. I do need to remember to sweep those a little bit better, just trying to get off any dust that might be on the piece or the foil itself. And then when that's cooled down a little bit, I'll peel that off, and there you have it. So now you have this really cool looking piece that has that beautiful foil on it. I'm going to take one of the Circle Foundation dies from Brutus Monroe, and then I'm going to move that around, just kind of see where I want that piece to cut out, and I'll run that through my die cutting machine, and then we'll have this really cool little circle. I can save that leftover piece for something else. And so that's how it's going to look on the front of there. I decide I want to trim down just a little bit of this, about 1/4 inch, and I am going to put that inside of my card base. So here's my card base. It's one of those pre-cut card bases that I am scoring at 3.5 inches, and then just making sure that I have that good and folded, and we'll have this nice little white border. But I decide that I don't want to keep the white border, so I'm going to take the tape runner that I just recently received, and we're going to run that all along that edge. This is another fun way to use your foils. So I'm going to run that all along that edge, and you see the leftover piece that I have up there of the shattered glass. I'm going to take that and just stick it right over the top, and it'll peel back the foil. So as you can see, it's just peeling that back. There are a couple areas where the tape didn't get, so I'll just run the tape runner over the top of that. The fact that this is the shattered glass one, makes it so that if there are seams, you really can't tell. So I'm just going to keep running that along there. Like I said, where there are spots that it doesn't hit, I can always use the tape runner again, and spots where it may not have picked up any, I can just keep pushing down, and then I'll end up having some really good coverage there. And it doesn't have to be perfect, because I'm going to cover that left or the right hand side with the panel that I've already got ready to go. But yeah, this is just a fun way to use up some of those leftover pieces of foil as well. And then when I'm happy with that, we'll grab our panel and see how that's going to look. But I love using my leftover pieces that way, so check it out. All right, so now we're going to take our glue and we'll adhere down our panel to our card base. And then for the circle, we're actually going to use some of the 3D foam squares. So I'm just pushing that down, making sure that's good and on there. I did go ahead and stamp out my sentiment the same way I did before, but this time I used some gilding embossing powder and then trimmed that down. But here we're using those 3D foam squares, just putting that all over the back of my circle. I did want to have a little bit of dimension on this one. And then I'm going to cut a little bit of a slant on my ho ho ho. We'll attach down our circle, and then we're also going to put some of the smaller 3D foam squares on the back of our ho ho ho, and then we'll peel off the release paper and attach that down. Trying to use our glass mat to line that up. Turn that over and trim off the excess. You can see on the inside I did put some foil in there as well as more flock. And so there you have it. There's our final card. Okay, so let's check out all the cards that I did end up making. Some of these were off screen. Here's one where I used that Falling Leaves stencil along with some gold Dior Oro foil, and then I've got a couple more. You saw those two that I made, and you saw this one as well. And then I have two more that I made because I just love using those prism sheets behind that Deco foil toner sheet panel. Isn't that just gorgeous? So there they are. I would love to know what you think. Like I said, this is a collaboration between Brutus Monroe and Deco foil, and I will have links to everything I used down below. If you liked this video, please hit the like button and subscribe if you have not already done so. And as always, thank you so much for stopping by.